This is Gala. She is a 13-year-old quarter horse cross Hanoverian. She's homebred, and I've backed her and broken her. The main problems I've had facing me whilst training her have been related to saddle fitting. She's a very awkward shape and she's very intolerant of badly fitting tack, and the result of that is that she jogs, brings her neck in and hollows. She's been doing purely Art2Ride for 2 years now. Here I'm starting her off in walk. I'm quite pleased with the walk that she's doing there. Starting her off is usually the hardest part of working her because she is quite lazy, but she's also a little bit overreactive to the forward movement aids. So her tendency is that if I put too much pressure on too soon, she jogs, lifts her head up and hollows. So it's a fine line between getting her active without losing the relaxation. So here you can see I'm just using my whip just to push her hindquarters over, and as you see there, she does her evasive action, which is to jog, lift her head up and go forward without actually using herself. So I just gather the lunge line up, shorten her up, slow her back down again and start again. Don't make any fuss about it. You can see there I'm again using my stick just to move her hindquarters over, just to get that inside hind working through and under herself. While she's still not quite active enough, it is improving. So she's lowering her head and stretching down, and she's got quite a good overtrack, and that inside hind leg is coming through. But there again you see she's just too much pressure and she's trotting and loses her movement over her back completely. So here I've just decided to shorten up the rein and just make her move away more effectively with a slightly shorter rein, and as soon as she relaxes and lengthens, I lengthen the rein and let her move on a little bit. Quite like this walk. She's moving round. She's got some of my other horses have much bigger natural paces and it's not as obvious when they're moving correctly, whereas Gala is much more clear cut with her. So there's some nice steps within that. That's quite nice going around there. She's slowed down a little bit, not quite as rushed. She's quite active from behind, still quite inconsistent. That's nice there. She is built downhill. She's takes after the quarter horse side of her. She's got the longer hind leg. She's not croup high now, but she was originally very croup high. So for her, the ask of getting her to work over her back, I think, is significantly harder than it is for some of these modern sport horses that are built very much uphill. Getting into a nice rhythm now. I'd still like her to be stretching more, a little bit more, and a little bit more consistent, as it's all a bit up and down. I think watching the video she needs to still be more in front of the leg. As I say, it's quite difficult to get her enough in front of your leg, but once you do, and in this case obviously the leg I'm referring to is the stick, but once you get her in front of the leg you get much more consistency. So whilst she's lowering and then raising her neck, lowering and raising her neck, I think it's because she's not truly enough in front of the leg, because it just doesn't keep that rhythm going. So there, although it's a little bit quicker, she is definitely in front of my leg, and the consistency is much better in the stretch, but it's all a little bit quick. Again with the canter, it's perhaps more obvious, but you can see she's on a right bend even though she's cantering left. Her quarters are not, she's not really lengthening on the right side of her body. And I think probably I'd say she's on 3 tracks. So I'm still after that hind leg and just asking her to move out with her hindquarters and engaging that left inside hind leg. The bend's improving at this stage, and that's a nice stretch as she comes round there. Good over track. A nice reach. And although it's erratic, the moments that are good are getting better. And they're a little bit slower, a little bit more relaxed, and much rounder. With her, our main problem has always been saddle fitting, and a massive frustration because she's quite a difficult shape, being quarter horse and croup high. She's got a forward girth groove. I started her off very easily, did a lot of lunge work with her as a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. She also, being a quarter horse, she had very well muscled back. She had a big trapezius muscle, so a big wide flat wither. She's got particularly narrow shoulders, so saddles just constantly wanting to go forwards and then digging into her shoulders. This obviously, as any horse would be, found very annoying and caused the shortening up, drawing a neck back, and affecting the freedom of movement of her shoulders. So that's really what I've had to work on, is to prevent what has become a habit with her, which is this the jogging, the bringing her head up and drawing her neck back in to her body and hollowing, which is what she now uses to avoid actually using herself and working, and also because conformationally the task is a lot harder because she's not built for going uphill. It's compounded the problem. She's taught me a lot though, because she's very intolerant of badly fitting saddles, or even moderately badly fitting saddles, and was the main reason why I became a saddle fitter, was in order to work out a way of finding a saddle that she could work in. Because I was so frustrated with having known her, obviously bred her. We've had her mother since she was a yearling, as we lost her last year as a 34-year-old, and I've had her father since he was a 5-year-old, and he's now 23. So there's nothing about this mare that I don't really know. So the frustration of not being able to get her to work over her back for her entire life has really driven me to be a saddle fitter, and constantly drives me to be even better and better at being a saddle fitter, because obviously as she changes the shape over time, it's I've had to, well, she's taught me really how to be better at my job. And now straight away, now that we've done a bit of work on the other rein, the quality of the walk is already much better. Got more active and much nicer stretch. There's an article that I've read recently. It was talking about teaching horses yoga, and one of the things it was talking about was the eye of the needle, which since I've started doing yoga myself, it's suddenly made a lot more sense to me, and that's what they call this movement. So when they're bringing their inside hind through between the other hind leg and the front leg, it was sort of making a lot more sense to me. And as the yoga instructor would say, it gives you sort of toothache in your joint. It also made a lot more sense to me in terms of how the horses feel when they're doing these stretches. And whilst it may not look like you're doing much when you're doing yoga, from a personal point of view, you realise that how the stretching, and something that looks very simple and doesn't look like you're working yourself particularly hard, you know that it absolutely does. So it has helped me have a much greater understanding of certainly work in hand and the walk work, how significant it can be, but also how important it is to make sure that your horse is in line whilst you're doing these things, because it's that detail that gets the real quality of the work. Now, I think she actually chose to go in canter at this stage, but I didn't make a fuss of it. I just let her go into canter. She finds canter very easy, although it is still a little bit on her forehand. I'll add as well that although I don't think you can really tell from the video, it's absolutely pouring in rain, it's pouring down with rain as well, so she's not entirely keen on that, the weather aspect of things. Ben's much better on this rein. Still inconsistent in her stretch. I think probably again watching the video, not really in front of the leg enough. As soon as you do get her in front of the leg, she is much more consistent in the stretch, and that's something I find she's much better at ridden. Not as rushing on this rein. Some nice strides there. She's getting into a better stretch. The actual speed of her leg movement is a lot slower. She's still nice and active. She's got her tail carried, swinging from side to side. So whilst it's still not where I'd like it to be, she's not stretched enough and she's not consistent enough, I'm quite pleased with the way she is moving because, as I said earlier, her paces are not the best in the world, and what I like about what I see here is that there is a bit more cadence to the movement, lightness of foot, and she is swinging through her back, but obviously could be better. Nice strides there. And there. And when she just lowers her head, you just see there's just so much more lift in her paces. It's quite good to watch her really because of the difference of her paces between her being over her back and lifting her head. It's very obvious what a difference the head carriage makes to the overall movement that it creates through her back and through her legs. That's really nice there. Much better speed. You see there I'm using the stick just to get that hind quarter out again. She is, I would imagine, on 3 tracks. You can I think, just about tell. So on both reins she's bringing her hind quarters in, which is an indication that she's not really, truly, or fully over her back at this stage. And that's really nice there, starting to get the stretch. Much straighter in her body there. And that's a nice canter. Again, it's still maybe fractionally on the forehand, but for her stage of development and with her conformational issues, I'm quite pleased with that. She's very well balanced. She loses her balance slightly on her transition, but she sort of picks herself up quite quickly. And the quality of the trot is a little bit rushed. And I'm just shortening the rein again, just to get a little bit closer and to slow the speed. There's some nice steps there where you can just see that she is coming over her back. It's a little bit slower, a bit more relaxed. Remaining quite active behind, nice swing in her tail. I'm just using slight vibrations down the rein just to ask her to lower her head slightly. Still, I would like it to be more consistent and lower. There's some nice moments. There, when she just puts her head down, it's just so lovely when you can see it coming over her back, and then she spoils it by picking her head up again. Really important when you're doing the lunging to make sure that you create a triangle between you and your horse so that you're always pushing them forwards. And you're making a right angle between your horse's body and where your stick is. So here, having done all the work, going back to the walk, you can see the quality of the walk is much better. She's more consistent, she's got a nice stretch, perhaps needs to be a little bit more active. But she's got a good over track. This is Gala. Here you can see us working in hand. She's been doing Art2Ride for 2 years now. Quite pleased with how she started off. She is a mare who can be quite difficult in that she rushes, so it's particularly in the work in hand I find it difficult to get her to relax and lengthen her top line and come through without her jogging and getting a little bit quick. But she's actually started off very nicely today and gone straight into a nice stretch and reasonably active. Here you can see me just starting to ask leg yield. I'm just making sure she's responding to the outside rein there because she's being a little bit unresponsive to my leg aid, in this case the stick. Just getting a little bit ahead of me there. I'm asking her to be more active and she's just attempting to jog, which is what she does as her avoidance tactics. So here again, because she's going a little bit quicker, I'm just instilling the response to my leg and making sure that she's doing it without running away. She can also be a bit bullish with her shoulders and not really responding to me, so I'm just here using the outside rein aid, just making sure she's listening to me, moving across the shoulders nicely. I really like to hear them blowing out because that means they're relaxing the rib cage. Particularly her, she comes out a little bit tense, so the more she high blows and relaxes, the easier it is for me to work her. Again there you could see me just using the outside rein just to make sure she's listening, because I was asking her to move across in a leg yield and she was completely ignoring me, so I was just testing the outside rein just to make sure she's responding. When you use your reins, you don't want to be using the reins at the same time, so I'm just using a little bit of outside rein and then a little bit of inside rein and a little bit of outside rein just to make sure she's responding to me. Although she's not being very responsive to my leg aid, in this case, the stick. Again, this mare, because she has a very long hind leg, it tends to push her onto her forehand. So with her shoulders then move a little bit quicker, and it's sort of a self-perpetuating issue. So with her, I almost wanted to go a little bit slower and a little more deliberate with her stride length, so that it gives her shoulders time to fully extend. It does take her a while to settle and relax. So if you look at her front legs there, they are moving a lot quicker and the stride length is much shorter, whereas the hind legs are much longer and more deliberate in the stride. So once she does relax, so again there you can see it, the hind legs are good and active, but the shoulders are not still fully extending. So what I'm looking for is the same relaxation and the same deliberate and long lengthened stride in front, which she's sort of getting there. It's just slowing down a little bit. Nice relax in her neck. And when you stood next to her, you can feel it, because you try and moderate your own stride length against hers. So I can feel it when it's getting quick and short, and then when we get to the point where I can take slower, longer steps, so I match her stride length. Just asking for a bit of leg yield there, which she is now responding a lot better than she was earlier on. Nice stretch, and you can see the stride, the 4-beat of the walk is just getting much slower and more deliberate, rather than the rushing in the front legs. Just asking for a little bit of shoulder in here. She does, in that instance, raise her head and come a little bit above the bridle. Because at this stage I'm having to use my stick quite a lot to make her actually move over, that's causing her to lift and raise her head. So I don't worry too much about that, because it's just a case of, as she works in and gets more responsive to my aids, she is then able to stay in the stretch. I have mentioned on the lunge video that she does use the jogging and hollowing and lifting her head as her way of getting out of having to work harder. So that's what you see there, is I'm asking her to just use herself a little bit more, and she raises her head and just comes a little bit quicker. You see there she's almost jogging, but I managed to just keep her in the walk. Much nicer, slower steps there. Good stretch in her neck, quite pleased with that. And here I'm asking for a shoulder in, and she's not coming above the bridle, and she's staying in the stretch, although, as you can see there, we're not getting a full response to my inside leg, because she's drifting off towards the left by the time I get to the end of the arena. Now on this rein, she is avoiding working correctly by trying to stay bent round to the left. So I'm being quite pedantic with her about bending round me when she's not quite leaning into me with her shoulder, but she is. I can feel that her right shoulder is too close to me, and when she is bringing her head round to the right, she's still twisting her head round and keeping her nose to the left. Nicely moving across with that inside hind there. Now it's taken a lot longer. I think on this rein she doesn't stretch as well as she had done on the other rein. I think some of this is because I'm being a bit more of a stickler to her, making sure that she's coming through with that inside hind and not allowing her to bulldoze me with this right shoulder. So because of that, she's not quite as relaxed and not going quite as much of a stretch. You can see there that although she's bending round to the right with her neck, the head is still slightly turned to the left. Now there is a moment whilst I'm doing this that I actually feel her shoulder sort of slide over itself, and as soon as that happens, I could feel it because I was stood next to her, but I haven't actually been able to spot it on the video, but it's when I'm passing C. She just sort of does a little jump with her shoulder, and as soon as she does that, she straight away comes a lot straighter. Again, you can still just see there. She's going nicely. She's got a nice stretch, but I can just see her head's twisting out to the outside. So I'm just lifting my inside rein just slightly when I'm applying the outside rein, so the left rein, but then just lifting my hand up on the inside just to bring her face round a little bit straighter. There, you can just see me doing it. Just asking her to, that you can see her doing it there. Nice, slow, rhythmic steps. Front legs are matching the back legs. With weird weather we're having at the moment, it's very warm, the flies are awful, and it's raining again. And she's quite affected by the flies they get in her ears. We've got some nasty flies that really irritate their ears. And that's a nice free moving shoulder as well, which is what I'm looking for, is that, as I said earlier, her shoulders end up going much too quickly and sort of overdrive from her hind end. Just asking her to move over, engage that right hind, and then that gets the stretch. She's rushing a little bit. As I say, it's a fine line with her, but to try and make sure she's active enough without. That's nice there. She's really opened her throat, really stretching out. I say it's a fine line with her because she does try and rush, but it makes you not want to use as much leg, but you almost have to go the other way and really make her go in front of the leg and sort of overreact so that then you can back down. Otherwise she just is a little bit cheeky and doesn't actually use herself correctly. You can see her head there is much straighter, so in the earlier parts where you could see she wasn't really bending round to the right, she is now. So before she would bend her body, but her head was staying sort of twisted round and her mouth was staying on the outside of the circle, and that's a nice leg yield there, and you can see there the head and neck has stayed straight. And as a result, the stretch has really improved. much longer, lower and softer. So I was really pleased with that. See there, you can see she's much straighter and much more bending round the inside. There you just saw her leg jolt. That's when I felt her shoulder change. So that was a significant moment, because as soon as she did that, she felt much straighter. And then she really stretched down and felt really round and really bent round the inside. So I'm really happy with that. You can see there she comes down the long side. The head and neck and face are all in alignment. She's bending round the inside, and I'm no longer having to defend my position on the inside of her with her right shoulder just being more dominant. Nicely moving across there. And that's the end of my session in work in hand.